This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
Let me tell you folks, when you spend as much time as I do, bitching and moaning about the shitfest our generation has the luck of calling entertainment, it's easy to forget why you ever liked the franchise in the first place. I've been going through a heavy love-hate relationship with anything Final Fantasy these last couple of years. It honestly makes me wonder if the good times were just a figment of my imagination. More recently, Devil May Cry has been added to that list. What with us gamers being forced to wait a decade between game releases, if we're lucky, which we're not, then Netflix, the Dark Realm franchises go to be mutated into unrecognizable abominations, had to take our beloved franchise and twist it into a generic modern catastrophe. So business as usual.
Round and round we go.
But that is not what we're here to rant about. Today we're here to remember why we love this series in the first place, why it holds such significance, even though the franchise has had a less than stellar history, and it's only getting worse. Shankar.
You stupid bitch!
And I think the success of DMC revolves around its lead character, the man who has been the face of the franchise since day one, and little has changed in over 20 years. Because Dante has got to be one of the greatest game characters ever created. That's not just fanboying at work, folks. I mean it. Now, obviously, spoilers for the DMC Capcom games and the Madhouse anime lie ahead. The 2013 reboot, and especially the Netflix show, can go fuck themselves. It was back in 2008 when I stumbled across my first taste of Devil May Cry. It was an AMV featuring DMC4 when it was still freshly released. Though Nero looked pretty cool too, there was no competing with the man in red, massive sword at his back with a full-face skull at the hilt, twin pistols that never needed reloading, and then devil arms. I had no context when I first saw the Lucifer scene. I needed none. It was awesome, it was bizarre, and perfect. I needed more, wanted more, and we got nothing for a solid 10 years. Thank you, Capcom. All those Resident Evil remakes on the agenda, you guys couldn't spare a little bit of love for your longtime DMC fans. Dante's going to be a great-granduncle before we get another installment at this rate. Needless to say, I bought up all the games in an instant, reveled in the experience, some more than others. The Madhouse anime was also out around this time, so that was a nice bonus, despite its many limitations. I'm gonna try to avoid discussing the anime in too great a detail. I would like to make a separate video on that. And oh yeah, you bet I was jumping for joy when DMC 5 was finally announced. It was a dream come true, and as hell of a revival as we could have hoped for. Dante's ludicrous charisma and unlimited badassery never failed to lift my mood when I was in a foul place. That and the music, oh lord. Devils Never Cry is still peak. It's so chock full of emotion, the conflicting tones in the lyrics and the instruments. And this is where the franchise and Dante himself get interesting. Frankly, I could have made this entire video just on the stylish absurdity Devil May Cry is known for. That would be enough. But fun as it all is, style alone isn't what makes Dante the best of the best. No, what makes him so great is that when you delve into his character, his background, you realize the man fits the title of hero better than many of those who are credited with such honors. Devil May Cry is only flashy on the surface. Beyond that, there's an amazing reservoir of depth and character building, unparalleled both within and without the gaming industry. Dante's story was already epic even before he was conceived. It was his father, Sparda, who set the path for his family millennia ago, a lone devil knight waging war with the legions of hell. not only resisting, but prevailing. He pushed back the hordes, facing off against Mundus, whom he also defeated and sealed away. Then, in another sacrifice, shedding light on the decency of this man, this legend, he sacrificed the lion's share of his own strength to prevent Hell from ever launching a full-scale assault again. This here's a legacy you'd be hard-pressed to beat. Both the best and most frustrating part is just how little we know about Sparda beyond what I just mentioned. We don't know what set him on this path, if it was a particular event or was he just an anomaly. Demons are malicious by nature, something a separate iteration of this franchise failed to grasp. So for someone as powerful and influential as Sparda to have a change of heart on this level, you can't help but wonder what caused it. Sparda is this magnanimous figure we're meant to aspire to, but deep down, we know we can never be on the same level as. Only by Devil May Cry 5 could it be argued that his sons finally surpassed him for sure, and that took no shortage of tragedy and innocence lost to achieve. This is the legacy Dante must live up to, and I think Sparda, his mysterious past included, is a great reminder of why our heroes are such important figures. I'm very pessimistic by nature. There's nobody I inherently cling to like that, specifically because most people turn out to be self-indulgent assholes who don't deserve any such praise. That being said, the concept of a hero is still important. It gives you something greater to work towards, even if it's ultimately out of your reach. Aim for the sky and you might only make it partway there, but it's still a better view than getting stuck on the ground your whole life. It's probably best we don't know much about Sparda, both to keep the enigma alive, which is always an alluring quality, but it also preserves the sentiment, the encouragement such characters create. Despite the legend prevailing, it was always bound to end in greater tragedy. Evil never changes. It never lets go either. So 2,000 years later, after Sparda presumably passed away, there's no shortage of myths and rumors about that, Mundus's minions suddenly felt brave enough to hit the Dark Knight where it hurts, by massacring his family, his wife Eva slain, his son separated, Virgil was almost killed himself, and Dante only escaped thanks to his mother's efforts. Childhood tragedy and dead parents are hardly anything new in storytelling. It's honestly as much a cliche as anything, but that doesn't make it hurt any less. Part of why this feels so impactful with Dante is he had nowhere to go. The only options were what Eva left him with that night.
If I don't return, you must run. By yourself, alone. You must change your name. Forget your past and start a new life. As someone else. A new beginning.
This era in Dante's life is part of what makes him so fascinating. Again, orphan protags are nothing new, but they usually have somewhere to go, someone to look after them. Peter Parker had Uncle Ben and Aunt May. Luke Skywalker had his aunt and uncle too. Despite lacking the unique qualities a parent can provide, these characters benefited from having these connections in their lives. It helped define them, give them stability. Dante didn't have this. Now, the years following Eva's death is mirrored in mystery, like father like son apparently. What we know is that Dante eventually went by the alias Tony Redgrave. He likely moved from place to place. The Madhouse anime did offer a potential origin. In episode 8, a small coastal town where a child named Anthony once lived, although the town was nearly burnt to nothing, supposedly by a demon attack, and somehow Tony and his mother were blamed for the incident. Now this angle is up in the air. Some information implies this may have been Virgil instead. Some people even suggest that there was a third descendant of Sparda. That old devil really got around if true. But the results were the same. A son of Sparda tried to live a normal life, safe from the monsters hunting them, and tragedy followed in their wake. Who knows if there were more examples just like this one. Dante's Redgrave alias may not have always kept him safe. Now some sources seem to suggest that Dante wound up at an orphanage following Eva's death. This might explain the mother they spoke of in episode 8 being someone different from Eva, and Dante does mention her death. Whether he was referring to Eva or another is unknown, as tends to be the pattern. If this is true, then it would mean Dante's very lineage got another mother figure killed, and it wouldn't be the only time later in life as he reached adulthood and started his career as a devil hunter and gun for hire. Nell Goldstein, another mother-like figure, would also wind up dying, though not before gifting him his iconic pistols, Ebony and Ivory. This repeated tragedy of people dying around him may very likely play into parts of Dante's personality that we'll get into in a bit. All of this, his father's legacy painting a target on his back, Eva's death, a vague background, Being a half-devil is cumbersome enough, but Dante never really had a chance at a normal childhood. It's likely he never received a proper education, never had anyone to celebrate his birthday with, no parent to teach him the ways of the world. He had to learn it all for himself as he struggled through life. And I think this plays heavily into Dante's personality. Not just the tragedy, but the consequences of it. Why he's so rambunctious, disorganized, and frankly, immature.
Clean your fucking room, son. I can smell it from out here.
Let's look at perhaps Dante's best-known personality quirk to explain what I mean. His love for pizza, which, if you ever wanted to have a character represent the most amount of people possible, this is how you do it, folks. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. And there's 3 pizza joints within a mile and a half of where I live. Temptation is everywhere.
Holy mother of Satan. Dibs.
Now, the series creator once explained that Dante's love for the za is a reflection of his lifestyle as a devil hunter. Quick, accessible, and not exactly the healthiest choice. There's no time for cooking a proper meal or practice the culinary arts. From personal experience, pizza is a lot easier to eat while you're on the move, unless you're into thin crust. You filthy heathens. It's a good explanation, sure, but what about the in-universe reason? Is Dante really just too lazy for top ramen or what? There's been many theories over the years. One that stood out the most to me suggested that it was pizza Dante had the night his family was attacked. The last meal he had as a normal, quote-unquote child, where his innocence was forever lost. I can absolutely see that being the case. It would explain a lot, but I've got my own theory. A simpler one, really. Dante's childhood was upended when he was just 8 years old. Even if he wound up at an orphanage, that's not the best environment for a child. He lacked proper supervision and development we all needed in those early years. Now think back to when we were 8. Stupid and impulsive, we had more energy than we've ever had since, and less to do with it than we could hope to have now. Think about what your favorite meal was. For some, I'm sure it's one of mom or dad's dishes, maybe something the grandparents made up. For many, they're gonna go with their favorite restaurant. Burgers and fries, tacos, pizza. Also remember, the only other thing Dante indulges in are strawberry sundaes. He never got to live a proper childhood. Now, as an adult, he's at least partially stuck in a childlike state. It's not that he's debilitated or can't handle mature and serious situations. We see the exact opposite from him time and time again throughout the series. But a part of him longing for those innocent days where he could take a nap and enjoy his favorite snack unhindered now takes up a chunk of his lifestyle. Pizza and ice cream are precisely what 8-year-old me would call a hearty meal. And if I had demon physiology like Dante, adult me would indulge in that kind of meal. Non-stop. You can't go wrong with pizza and ice cream, folks.
I regret nothing.
Maybe I'm looking a little too much into this, but there's some seriously deep characterizations to be made from just about any of Dante's habits, and each one makes him more interesting as a person. Take his incessant habit of napping, something we see from him a little too often, I think. It's most noticeable in the Madhouse anime, where we get to see Dante's day-to-day business, and some more in DMC 5, other instances of him just sitting at his desk, dozing off as the world spins around him. Seemingly without a care in the world, Dante is always painted as energetic, more like a force of nature than a mere man. So why does he lounge about when he could be taking the proactive approach? He genuinely appears lethargic, up until some demons are involved, so he can do what he does best. Not to say he's without hobbies. Some iterations of the Devil May Cry shop, Dante has a guitar and drum set. I doubt those are just meant to be props, though by later entries as Dante gets older, those no longer seem to be around. I don't know if that's meant to be him losing interest, if he pawned them off to settle his debt, or just a switch in design choice by Capcom. Personally, I prefer the DMC 3 and anime versions. I refuse to acknowledge an office too small to have that opening fight from DMC 3. It's too epic to reject. Dante doesn't seem to have much of a life outside of devil hunting. The Madhouse anime exemplified this best, with just how often we'll tune in on him lying around, either napping or occupying himself with something trivial. Like fashion magazines, apparently. Just waiting for a phone call to give him something to do. What he says at the end of DMC 3 summarizes Dante's issues the best.
I love this. This is what I live for. I'm absolutely crazy about it.
Part of Dante's complexity is how he's so reckless on the surface, and yet his behavior is remarkably specific. His favorite food being one example, whether we go with the creator's idea or the theory I suggested. And his work habits having nothing major outside of killing demons. Given his trauma, this isn't too surprising. Demons took everything from him. Now he's obsessed with returning the favor, plus interest. Also interesting to note is that while Dante embraced his humanity, unlike his brother, we'll get to him shortly, Dante also seems to isolate himself from humanity. Now, Dante himself has mentioned how humans can be as big a pain as devils. We don't always leave with the best impressions, do we? Even those closest to him aren't showcased as a tight-knit group. Lady often travels for her job. Trish, his partner, makes a habit of striking out on her own, out of frustration with him, or perhaps just a chance to explore and venture out. And so this powerful demon remains by himself, with only a small collection of friends for company when it's available. It often makes me wonder if this is a deliberate choice on his part. Despite opting to live as a human, is this fear of himself? Is it self-loathing? Does Dante not trust himself to be around other people? Given his history, how his very lineage destroyed his family, his childhood, it may just be Dante fears history repeating itself, as it tends to do. This tendency to isolate himself seems to spit in the face of another interesting fact I learned. Dante apparently doesn't age while in his devil form, a devil form he noticeably refrains from using unless necessary. It's another factor in his choice to live as a human, but also one that contrasts heavily with his other personality traits. He isolates himself, yet clearly has no interest in remaining alone forever, which in his devil form Dante could achieve. His general disdain for demonkind definitely shines through in examples like this. I'm also pretty sure the forces of hell don't care about his debt, so that's probably a win for the demon column. Not as though that would ever change Dante's mind.
Money? Why didn't I think of that? Because you don't have any money? Good point.
Alright, I need to take back what I just said about Dante's prejudice against demons. Sure, he does by and large hate them, and enjoys nothing more than mowing them down like good old-fashioned cannon fodder. It's most curious to note then that Dante has had little trouble throughout his career accepting demons that show compassion and other human qualities. You would think with a history like his, this would be more of a handicap, that he would exterminate them all on the spot with zero remorse or hesitation. More like Freerun, to be honest. But we don't see that. Trish, his partner, is the closest we got to Dante losing control of himself. And that was in the very first game. And to be fair, she did backstab him after being made into the image of his mother with the exact intent of manipulating his feelings. I think getting a little pissy is justified in this case. And Trish, despite her intents, is moved by Dante's actions. She helps see Mundus defeated once again. Another example we get is in episode 3 of the Madhouse anime. A demon named Brad. I assume he changed it when he entered the human world. I don't know exactly how demon culture determines names, but Brad, the how not to use healing magic demon, doesn't really click. Anyways, he was summoned to help bring his master into the human world, a far uglier, more dangerous creature. Brad is very weak, someone who couldn't hope to stand up to Dante or most other demons. More than that, however, he doesn't want to. He genuinely enjoys the human world, especially after he falls in love with a woman, someone he actively fights to save. Dante, who was hired to kill him, rejects the job upon seeing this, declaring that Brad has the qualities needed to be human. While the examples are few and far between, they show us that Dante doesn't let his quest for revenge turn him into a monster. It's a common trope in revenge stories, but this devil hunter mostly keeps the lust for violence in check. Something we know for a fact Dante has. His competitiveness with Virgil, the desire to pick a fight just for the hell of it. Even duking it out with Nero after surmising he's Virgil's son. Dante is still part demon. Violence is a part of his nature, but a part he evidently has control over. Seeing a character nearly turn into a monster fighting the monsters who wronged them is a great story in its own right. I'm a huge Berserk fan. Guts, throughout the Lost Children arc, nearly goes insane pursuing his target. And reeling back that rage to focus on what truly matters to him was a pivotal step in his development. Still though, it's refreshing to see a character who has that problem resolved without going through a multi-season arc filled with drama and drawn-out conflict. It's a rarity these days. Now, a running theme, or maybe a gag at this point, is how Dante is in ludicrous amounts of debt. Again, the Madhouse anime covers this the most. He's broke more often than not. He explains that it's due to often receiving a bill for his services rather than a paycheck. Bit rude, until you see just how reckless Dante gets while on the job. Episode 2 of the anime, he helps stop a highway devil by destroying an entire bridge. Dude, do you know how expensive infrastructure is? No offense to the guy, but that one he brought on himself. Like I said, this is something of a gag rather than a major story element. Now, if you're like me and let your thoughts go down the darker path, you might wonder, why doesn't he just rob a bank? He can move faster than the human eye can track. Dante could slip in, take just enough to cover his bills, and be in the clear without even causing major harm to others or the economy. Obviously, Dante is a decent guy, no matter what his callousness might suggest. He would never do such a thing, but it is an interesting angle that says a lot about who he is, what he values. I would argue Dante's debt is certainly an example of his immaturity.
You fiscally irresponsible fool!
Caring little for collateral, so long as he's got an excuse to let loose and do what he wants. It causes him plenty of trouble, but I would also argue that it reflects his nobler side. This is a man who has the power to do whatever he wants, and he actively chooses not to, even when it's to his detriment. There are multiple times in the anime where Dante rejects payment for one reason or another, even wealthy clients who can afford it. Dante is shown to be awfully charitable despite his circumstances, not taking money unless he completes a job. In one example, he returns a piece of jewelry offered as payment when he realizes the one who hired him was already dead. It's probably good for the karma to keep humble when literal ghosts hire you. One would think, at least. That one was a bit of a mindfuck. And so much for not talking about the Madhouse anime. Still better than that Netflix crap. In truth, that generosity of his runs deeper than you realize. Many fans have often wondered what Dante does with all his devil arms acquired during the games. I personally envisioned a hefty weapons closet where the souls of various devils he's defeated nag and bicker at each other, and Dante has to shut them up from time to time. It's a bit too sitcom, I suppose. Still, it's a fun thought. Apparently, Dante pawns them all off or offers them up as collateral to cover damage during his work, which is painful to hear. I mean, Pandora alone can turn into 666 different weapons. What price tag does that come with? It is a literal cartoon satchel you can pull conceivably anything from. Beyond all that, it's stated that Dante often gives what little money he has left to people who have been victims of demon attacks. This man, who is destitute, just look at his office. The only fancy thing he possesses is the jukebox. Hell, his phone looks older than my grandparents. Dante seems to live a very minimalist lifestyle, and the fact he gives away what little cash he can spare, despite his poverty, suggests this lifestyle is more of a choice than he lets on. Though this charitable side may double back to his recklessness in that he simply doesn't care about the financial repercussions. I suppose it might be a slight mixture of both. Yeah, oddly enough though, I think it's easy to not so much forget, but lose track that Dante's life was scarred by tragedy. It's an ever-present part of himself, something he will never break free from. Even as of DMC 5, where I believe he's canonically into his 40s, much of his personality has remained the same. But I find it interesting just how little emphasis gets put on his misfortune. Directly, at least. Many people who've had a tough life aren't prone to show that off. You'll never see Dante going to therapy. Though with this family, maybe it's not such a bad idea. We also never see Dante explain his life story to anybody. There are a few instances now and again where he'll rationalize his choices or reflect on things, like with his mother's sacrifice. But beyond that, Dante keeps it all to himself. Too many people, or should I say characters, are obsessed with their pain, like their revenge turning them into a monster trope I already mentioned. Their tragedies, their regrets, it's always something. This is doubly worse in TV shows that need to occupy that full 40 to 15 minute runtime, so they remind you how sad and miserable their protagonist is, non-freaking stop. I recently toured the White Rabbit from the Netflix show A New One. The writers were so determined to let us know what you were supposed to think about everything with little to no room for nuance. His whole life was a tragedy until it wasn't. And then it was again. It was grating and it was cheap. Dante shows us what he's about through action and behavior. We get to see his flaws, his quirks, his shortcomings, all without exposition of any kind. No lectures or lamentations. It's really something I don't think gets enough appreciation these days. Writers feel the need to body slam you with the emotion. So fiercely, in fact. It kills exactly what they were trying to create.
Ah, gotcha! Oh, son of a...
That was pretty dramatic.
Yeah, it usually works better if someone is standing there when I do that.
There is one scene from DMC 5 that captures this notion the best, where we see Dante return to his childhood home, the place where it all began for him and his brother. Even up to the present, those scars are being carried. Virgil's obsession with power, the incessant rivalry between the two. But you might have noticed if you watched the scene, there's not a single mention of his mother's death. There's no flashback scene, though we did get one earlier in the campaign. But they didn't double down on it, something many other projects would absolutely do. The scene is perfect. Rain drizzles from overhead, the building is dilapidated, long since abandoned to the elements. There is some emotional music, but it's rather light. I barely noticed it on my first watch. Dante is in complete silence, not something he's known for. Even more interesting, we see him wander into the mansion from the point of view of these closet slits, likely the very place Eva hid him all those decades ago. There is a lot said in the seconds between Dante arriving and him reflecting on the nature of the rebellion. The low ambience is meant to entrance you in the moment. It's such a noticeable shift from the loud and hectic music we're used to during gameplay and cutscenes. Then it switches to the closet viewpoint, where Dante was hiding the moment his life changed forever. Not a word of dialogue is needed. We've already seen this perspective. Its mere presence does all the talking. Griffin chattering at him, noting how out of character Dante seems. The man is well out of his comfort zone in this place, but he's not the frightened child who hid from the monsters. And he's not about to start breaking down now. We are seeing a man stable in the face of his tragedy, and it says a hell load about his character that he confronts it this way. Quiet, subtle, a perfect subversion for one so loud and energetic. I also really like how it's here where Dante's growth in terms of power reaches its ultimate peak. When he puts together how the rebellion emerges versus the Yamato it severs, we see an epic cutscene of him absorbing the Sparda, his father's own power, directly into himself, and a new transformation equal parts monstrous and pure badass.
You are absorbing the Sparda!
Pardon me for breaking from the analysis, but the Sin Devil triggers, both his and Virgil's, are pure epic. There's no other way to describe them. It's a nice piece of parallelism that Virgil separated his human and demon halves right here in the same place. However, he's facing away from the portrait of his family, the image of his humanity, the humanity he was preparing to reject, whereas Dante is facing towards it. He is acquiring more demonic power, but not at the expense of his morality, his soul. It's the focal point for both characters, as well as where they both diverged, the paths they would choose, the resolve that would carry them throughout their lives. Alright, I thought of several ways to wrap up this video. The best route, I think, is to go over some of Dante's more prominent relationships. Despite his habit to isolate himself, his behavior around friends and family do speak a lot about who the man is, what he's really about. This does mainly revolve around Virgil and Dante's nephew, Nero, Lady and Trish to a lesser extent, just because we don't see as much of them, which is a crime in my opinion. Who the hell wouldn't want to see more of this?
Hey, Jacob, bum.
What? Too risque? That's absurd. Trish has been wearing the same stripper's outfit since 2001. Now let's start with Nero. If you pay attention, you can absolutely see the more sentimental side of Dante. I can still remember how fans reacted to him when DMC 4 dropped. They wondered if he was another son of Sparda, or of Virgil, or even Dante. I was skeptical about that myself. Dante doesn't strike me as the man to make that kind of mistake. Virgil, on the other hand, he is a little loose with the sheath, as you can see. But more interesting than the fan theories were what was going through Dante's head when they first met. Think about it, white hair, demonic power, bit of an attitude. Nero definitely exhibits a mixture of his uncle and father, outwardly cold and dismissive, but also nonchalant and openly rebellious. DMC 4 never gave us a chance to see what Dante thought about Nero's origins, but there is no way on Hell's Green Earth he didn't suspect Nero and he were related. Fortunately in DMC 5 we get confirmation on this.
I had the feeling the first time I saw you, but I just wasn't sure. And then I saw how the Yamato reacted. And I was certain. He's your father.
When you realize this, then compare it to the rest of Dante's actions, a lot of things do start to clear up. Though their initial battle at the start of 4 got pretty crazy, you never get the impression Dante was trying his damnedest to kill Nero. The closest he got was when we see Nero's Devilbringer for the first time, which looked so badass, let's not lie. Maybe it was curiosity that had Dante get so close to harming him. We have seen repeatedly how the Sparda family tends to refer to violence as a first, middle, and last measure when investigating things. To various levels, admittedly. Personally, I don't think he had any intention of harming Nero, not majorly at least. Dante had plenty of opportunities. His behavior throughout the rest of the game makes that clear, and then later on when they have their second bout.
I'm here for the sword. Your point being?
This, I think, was a serious moment for Dante. He's not the type to show it, of course, but seeing Yamato again, that specter of Nero's Devil Trigger bearing similarities to Virgil, and recalling how their encounters over the years always ended brutally. Now it's confirmed that Nero is his brother's son, the only family Dante has left in the world, that he's aware of. What I loved most about their interactions between 4 and 5 is how protective Dante gets with Nero, by his own standards. It's most apparent in 5 with how often he tries to warn Nero away from facing Urizen, knowing who and what he really is, and not wanting his nephew to get caught in the middle of it.
Get Nero out of here! This was a bad move! I can still fight! Go! You're just dead weight! Back up!
Okay, granted, Dante could have handled that better, but he is trying to protect him. Not to worry, I'm sure Nero won't spend the next month fuming over such a meager insult.
You listen, deadweight.
This is why I don't do business with family. In truth, Dante withholding Urizen's and subsequently Virgil's identity like this runs deeper than the game lets on. He went into this job with every intent on killing Urizen. Sure, this keeps Nero's hands clean while Dante damns himself. The number of times he's nearly killed Virgil, in his mind, one more round probably doesn't make that big of a difference. I do wonder though, was Dante okay with keeping this secret from Nero indefinitely? Was it just a case of keeping his nephew's conscience clean? Or did Dante also not want him risking getting in the way of him and his brother settling things, the only way they seem to know how? Family really is complicated, and I doubt a restraining order will fix anything with these guys. I do not doubt that in Dante's mind, his intention was to keep Nero safe and out of harm's way. Behavior like that, along with leaving the Yamato with Nero, letting him defeat the Savior, all points towards Dante trusting his nephew to get the job done. Apparently, the Devil May Cry logo on Nico's van was a gift from Dante, encouraging Nero to head out into the world to take devil hunting jobs. Whatever else, Dante demonstrates that he's a good uncle, and probably a better parental figure than Virgil.
I'm taking this back.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with this guy. I would definitely like to do a separate video on him. Virgil may not have as much variety to work with compared to Dante, but Virgil's personality and demeanor forms the perfect clash between these two. Using twins who are the opposite in every way besides appearance is a great motif. The classics never die. I think what makes Virgil unique in this regard is how he still went through the same trauma Dante did. His mother was murdered, his brother presumed dead. He was all alone during an important era of his life. And like his brother, these circumstances shaped who he would become. Only unlike Dante, Virgil pursued the opposite extreme. Even as children, these two apparently clashed, and that hostility would only evolve as they reached adulthood. Virgil's lust for power put him in direct conflict with his brother, requiring his half of the perfect amulet. This is something that didn't get a terrible amount of focus in DMC 3, but one that I think reflects Dante's sentimentality, as well as reinforcing the rivalry between these two. The amulet was the only memento from his mother, the only part of Eva Dante has left, and Virgil, another part of Dante's life he thought lost forever, strode right in and took it from him. In the DMC 3 prequel manga, the same thing happens, though Virgil decides to let him keep it for a while longer, stating he could just steal it anytime he desires. And thus, in the game, a year later, he does. Just look at Dante's reaction after just barely surviving their fight, where he loses the amulet. That anger isn't a mere case of the grumps over getting his ass kicked. It's losing something invaluable to him, something he wants back. He needs back. The second chunk of DMC 3, leading to their rematch in the chamber and Arkham's reveal as a true villain of the story. I consider this to be Dante's second wind. He unlocks his potential as a devil, gains new strength he previously never thought possible, but it still wasn't enough to become the man he needed to be. Throughout the game, Dante was only focused on what he wanted, his personal grievances. There was no larger goal to strive towards. It's only thanks to Lady that Dante found his true awakening, not just fighting and killing devils, but making an impact upon the world, preserving the legacy he had inherited, whether he had asked for it or not, and taking responsibility for his family. It's this determination that ultimately lets Dante surpass Virgil in their third and final encounter. There's a recurring theme in the series about those with devil powers reaching new unforeseen heights once they commit that strength to the benefit of others rather than themselves. Demons who cannot see that path resort to increasingly terrible methods to grow stronger, normally with the sacrifice of innocence. By the thousands, Dante, on the other hand, resolves to use his own strength for something greater than himself. It's likely how Sparda was able to overcome Mundus and the hordes of hell 2,000 years ago. This stark difference shines well beyond DMC 3. such as the fact Dante never relies on the Sparda for most of his career. The only two examples we see definitively was against Mundus in DMC 1 and against Urizen in 5. No, Dante relies on his own strength and his allies when the occasion calls for it. This may be in part driven by ego. Dante is a cocky prick, but there is more to it. Likely seeing Virgil go mad, risking countless lives in his pursuit of strength, was motivation enough for Dante to refuse his father's power. It may just point towards a subconscious fear he could go down a similar path as his brother. All of this is speculation on my part, based on Dante's overall personality, his behavior, and the ideas expressed throughout the games. All I'll say beyond that is how much I enjoy having the privilege to read into all this, rather than having it explained to me like a toddler. Frankly, it makes the story far more enjoyable. Dante and Virgil's parallels make for fascinating character studies that this single video couldn't hope to do justice towards. For now, their clash in DMC 5 is the other half of the conversation. Many of the same issues from 3 persist. Virgil's quest for power, the motivation behind it. Dante relying on himself instead. It's also a great comparison how Dante receives a similar power boost as Virgil, maintaining the tense equilibrium between these two. Only Dante's was achieved through self-discovery and determination. Just as before, he didn't need to sacrifice an entire city while putting millions of other lives at risk with the Qliphot's emergence. Even here and now, the similarities to 3 are blatant. A giant demon construct tearing through a major urban center, Virgil waiting on top of it for Dante to arrive, his lust for strength motivating such evil actions. The only difference is, Virgil didn't just acquire strength, he also took in that human part of himself, through V. And with that, introspection on all of his actions. But that is a topic for a different video. This one's getting long already. Now, one of the few complaints I have about 5 does stem from their final fight atop the Qliphot. Now, the fight itself kicked ass. It's what Nero says here that I have an issue with.
I'm putting a stop to this sibling rivalry.
Yeah, sorry. But there's a hellload more going on here than a sibling feud. Now, is that a factor in their aggression? I don't doubt it, not for an instant. Is that really the key factor though? Think about it, every time Virgil appears, a river of blood seems to follow in his wake. Imagine how many people were killed when Timonigru sprouted from the earth, and the hordes of demons spilling out when the seal was undone. Same as in DMC 5. Except the death toll was no doubt far larger. Every time his brother continues this quest for power, innocents always pay the price. Dante resolving to take him down may be personal in part, but it's also a matter of duty. Again, it's the exact same thing as in DMC 3, so the developers trying to twist it into strictly a family drama was terribly reductionistic. But in Nero's mind, he was trying to stop his family from murdering each other. That goal was enough for him to hold them both back for a time.
Awesome, I'm like a fucking Jedi.
That being said, I did find their ending satisfying. No longer at each other's throats, Nero's efforts reaching them as they set aside their squabble to prevent the Qliphot from harming more innocents. Again, stopping Nero from following is another example of Dante protecting his nephew, trusting him to handle things on Earth while they're cut off in Hell. This partnership between the brothers appears like a sudden shift at first. Then when you remember in 3 after Arkham enters the scene,
it's time for the clown to bow out, Arkham.
Dude, the show's over.
Differences aside, these two have quite the habit of working together rather easily when the occasion calls for it. And the finale, where they're still trying to one-up each other. Only now the competition is friendlier? If anything, these two seem to be enjoying themselves. Even Virgil cracks a smile. Hot damn. Overall, I cannot think of an alternate ending that better suits either of them. This is the big reason I would love a DMC 6. To see these two continue mending their relationship, see Virgil recover that human side of himself. Just imagine if Virgil and Dante began running the DMC shop together. These two are godlike compared to anything else in the series. That would be one hell of a party. Now, the other two I would like to mention are Lady and Trish, who again, lacking the same screen time as the Sparda boys, puts a limit on how much there is to say. We'll talk about Patty Lowell when I do a video on the Madhouse anime. With Trish, it was her experience with Dante that opened her up to humanity, fighting for a righteous cause, and she appears to have seamlessly integrated into the world, likely with his help. Also already mentioned, she travels from the Devil May Cry shop on her own quite often, and it's open to interpretation how much of that is her own wanderlust or a sign of frustration with Dante. Just look at her reaction when he receives the Foss hat and does his Michael Jackson dance.
Yeah! Whoa! Yeah!
That woman is not impressed with his antics, not one bit. And in DMC 4, when they take Lady's job, she straight up bails on the man without even asking his input. So I guess they're partners in parentheses? Still though, it's equally obvious they depend on one another. And no, we will not be entertaining any shipping between her and Dante. There is enough scary things in the world without that nonsense. Besides, I'm firmly with the Lady and Dante shippers. See? Match made in heaven. Like I said, it really is a disappointment that Trish nor Lady ever get much screen time for themselves. I feel like these two have a lot more to offer the franchise than what they've been allowed to give. And for the record, Netflix Mary does not count. She is the worst. I've explained enough how horribly they handled her. Now, Capcom Lady, Dante, these two have their dynamic go back the furthest of any of the cast, outside of Virgil, and despite their differences, they appear to trust one another when it really counts. It's also apparent that Dante's financial troubles impact Lady too, often loaning him cash to stay afloat, and he's done a piss poor job on that angle. The Madhouse anime especially showcases these two nagging and throwing shade at each other non-stop. In DMC 4, this attitude doesn't seem to have lost its momentum.
Try not to keep us waiting, Dante.
Yeah.
Despite the shippers desperately wanting to see these two hook up, myself included, I doubt it would be a functional relationship. Which is probably why shippers want to see it. It would be a beautiful disaster. Now, Dante shows great faith in these two, despite all the drama that apparently goes on around him. Claiming that only his brother himself could arguably best both of them speaks positively towards their abilities, especially since Lady is fully human. I found it kind of funny how the last scene we see these two is at the office, chowing down on some pizza, wondering if and when Dante will show up. They're remarkably calm about the ordeal, aren't they? Shit, Lady almost immediately tries to snag the office for herself when it's apparent Dante won't be back. Sure, granted, this isn't the first time he's disappeared, not even the first time into hell. This must be the equivalent of a relative going on extended holiday for a few months. I'm sure these gals believe in him as much as Dante does in them. That being said, bickering over who gets his home is kind of a dick move, ladies. Though they did give him a few weeks first. Who knows, maybe Morrison has the right idea. Life goes on, back to work. And honestly, I think that's what sticks out to me after all these years of enjoying the series. Not just the style, the excitement, the fan service. It's the simpler things tucked in between moments you never think about on your first watch, your first playthrough. Dante has saved the world multiple times. So much so he cracks jokes at his own exploits. This man who surpassed his father, both in terms of power and legacy, and yet he lives in squalor. The man regularly has the power and gas cut to his office because he's short on cash. There's no statue in Dante's honor to be found, no fan base singing his praises when he goes off to work, no wealthy benefactor covering his expenses as a sign of appreciation for all this man has done for the world. His partner wanders off on her own on the regular. She and Lady talk down to him as much as anything else. And the second he's gone, they discuss what to do with all of his stuff. Dante truly gets no love for all he's done for humanity. No recognition, no idols of worship or praise. Just a dirty old office, bills that need to be paid, and the next job to get done. And even if Dante receives nothing for the effort, he'll be there anyways. Because that's who he is, and nothing in the world, or hell itself, will change that. That's why Dante is worthy of the title of hero. It's why he's one of my favorite characters across any medium. There are other characters that might be similar to him. There have been attempts to mimic, copy, reinvent him, and thus far, I say none of them have succeeded. There's no one else quite like Dante the Devil Hunter. And characters like him will stand a test of time. That's why he's one of the greatest ever created. Thanks for watching.